You ever walk into a room and feel like life just handed you a script you didn't audition for? That was me on a Thursday night, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, holding a basket of laundry like some domestic gladiator about to lose the war. There she was, Melissa. My wife of 11 years. The woman who once claimed her wildest fantasy was a weekend alone with a good book and a hot bath. Apparently, the book now had a plot twist, and the bath came with costumes. She didn't hear me at first. Too busy folding what looked like a nun's habit with the care of a museum curator. On the bed sat a suitcase yawning wide, half-packed with silk, lace, and something that looked like it belonged in a confessional, or maybe a late-night HBO special. Then I saw the other thing. A glossy 12-pack of condoms perched on top like a cherry on this humiliation Sunday. I swear, for a second, I thought maybe I'd stumbled onto a church fundraiser for the world's kinkiest parish. But no, the reality was simpler and uglier. My wife wasn't planning a business trip. She was planning an expedition, destination, someone else's bed. My first instinct? Denial. Maybe the costumes were a joke. Maybe the condoms were for, what? Balloon animals? Yeah, that's the kind of desperate optimism that keeps men like me buying scratch-off tickets and hoping their marriage isn't a burning dumpster. She looked up then, saw me standing there. And Melissa, God bless her bold little heart, didn't even flinch. Oh, hey, she said like I'd caught her packing socks. Just getting ready for the conference. Conference. Sure. If by conference, she meant a symposium on creative betrayal. I nodded. Played it cool. Years of marriage had taught me the art of swallowing rage like it's a vitamin. But inside, something primal cracked. Not loud, not violent, just a quiet snap. Like an old beam finally giving way under too much weight. I didn't confront her. Didn't launch into a Lifetime movie monologue about vows and trust. I just smiled, said, "Need any help?" Because if Melissa was about to turn our vows into a punchline, I was about to become the setup to the cruelest joke of her life. That night, while she showered, I found her suitcase again. I stared at that 12-pack of rubber soldiers, lined up like they were about to march into battle. And then I did something I'm not proud of, but damn, I don't regret it either. I grabbed a needle from the sewing kit and went to work. Tiny, surgical holes in each one. Like planting landmines in enemy territory. You might think that's petty. And you'd be right. But when a man's heart is hanging by dental floss, sometimes all he's got left is precision sabotage. I zipped the bag back up, placed everything exactly as it was, and kissed her goodnight like the world's calmest husband. And as I lay there in the dark, listening to her scroll through Instagram with that little smirk she thought I couldn't see, I thought, game on, sweetheart. Game on. The next morning, Melissa left for her conference, and yes, I'm putting that in air quotes so hard my fingers might cramp. She kissed me on the cheek, all perfumed and polished, dragging that suitcase like it wasn't stuffed with betrayal and rubber grenades. I waved her off like a dutiful husband, even managed a smile. Inside, though, I was a pressure cooker set to low simmer. Once her taillights disappeared down the street, I made myself a coffee, black as my mood, and sat at the kitchen table like a detective in a noir film. That's when I noticed it, her tablet. The one she never let me touch, like it contained state secrets. Which, technically, it did. I don't know if it was divine intervention or just her arrogance, but she hadn't logged out of her email. Rookie mistake. 5 minutes later, I was sifting through an inbox full of confirmation emails for flights, hotel bookings, and then I hit pay dirt. A string of messages with a subject line that read, "Can't wait to see you, nurse naughty winking face." You ever feel your blood go so hot it starts tasting metallic in your mouth? That was me. And then I saw it, a phone number. Not a work contact, not a hotel line, his number. The mystery man. The Romeo to her Juliet. Or maybe the Kirk to her Starfleet cosplay, given the costumes. My hands didn't even shake. I grabbed my phone, punched in the digits, and waited. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice, smooth, cocky, the kind of tone that sounds like it's wearing cologne. Hello? I didn't yell. Didn't snarl. Just said, calm as a saint with nothing left to lose. Congrats, you're going to be a daddy. Oh, and tell Melissa she's homeless now. Silence. The kind you could spread on toast. Then a stammer, what? Who is this? I hung up. Because some words don't need sequels. Then I got to work. Packed every stitch of her clothing, every shoe, every bottle of overpriced serum she swore was essential to aging gracefully. Tossed it all in black garbage bags like yesterday's news. And because I'm a man of poetic justice, I didn't dump it on the curb like some sad TV cliché. No. I loaded it in the back of my truck and drove straight to Loverboy's address, the one conveniently listed in the email signature. His house wasn't what I expected. White picket fence. 2 cars in the driveway. A garden gnome smiling like life was one big sitcom. I almost laughed, because what I was about to do. This wasn't going to be a sitcom. This was going to be Shakespeare with a side of TNT. I rang the doorbell. Waited. Footsteps approached, light and quick. The door opened, not to him, but to her. His wife. Perfectly pressed blouse, wedding ring glinting in the sun, smile warm and trusting. The kind of smile that makes you want to apologize before you detonate her afternoon. Can I help you? She asked. I nodded toward the bags stacked behind me. Yeah, I said, voice steady as a sniper's. You might want to sit down first. And that's when the ground shifted under me. Because what came out of her mouth next? It didn't just blow up my marriage, it rewrote the entire damn map. She didn't sit down like I suggested. She didn't even blink. Just crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe like she'd been waiting for this exact scene to play out. Melissa's husband, right? She said. I froze mid-breath. Excuse me? You heard me, she replied, her voice low and almost bored, like this was item number 7 on her to-do list. You're Melissa's husband. I nodded slowly, the weight of my garbage bag justice suddenly feeling a lot less righteous. And you're his wife. She gave this humorless little smile that didn't touch her eyes. Unfortunately. For a second, we just stared at each other, 2 strangers standing in a driveway surrounded by lies so thick, you could pave a freeway with them. Finally, I cleared my throat. So, you knew? Her laugh was sharp enough to slice my ego clean in half. Knew? Sweetheart, I introduced them. The words landed like a sucker punch. I almost dropped the trash bags. You what? She shrugged like she'd just confessed to microwaving fish at the office. Yeah. Thought it'd keep him busy, keep him out of my way. And Melissa? She was practically begging for someone to tell her she's still desirable. Her eyes raked over me like she was sizing up a used car. Guess you weren't cutting it. There are moments in life when your brain just, blue screens. This was one of them. The woman who should have been screaming, throwing things, calling a lawyer, was instead giving me a TED talk on outsourcing marital boredom. And she wasn't done. Look, she said, if you're here to blow up their little affair, don't bother. They'll burn out in a few weeks. He gets bored fast. And Melissa? Well, judging by those, she pointed at the black bags in my truck bed, she's got abandonment issues written all over her lingerie. Her tone was calm, surgical, like she'd dissected 100 situations just like this. And maybe she had. Which begged the question, what kind of marriage was I standing in the shadow of? Mine felt broken. Hers sounded like it had been buried in a pet cemetery years ago. I swallowed the lump in my throat, every muscle in my body screaming to either punch something or laugh until I passed out. So that's it? You're just fine with this? She tilted her head, gave me a smile that looked like it had been filed down to a blade. Fine? No. Strategic? Absolutely. Because while he's busy playing doctor with your wife, I'm busy emptying accounts and finalizing papers. When this is over, he'll have nothing but a stack of credit card debt and a midlife crisis. And Melissa? Well, she let the word dangle in the air like a noose. Let's just say she's not walking away unscathed. I stared at her, the reality slamming into me like a freight train. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a chess game, and I'd wandered onto the board thinking I was a player when I was really just a pawn. Then she leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. You want real revenge? Don't toss her clothes on my lawn. That's amateur hour. You and I, we could do better. There's a very specific kind of silence when your entire worldview starts cracking like cheap porcelain. That's what I heard in my own skull as this woman, this perfect step-forward-looking avenger, leaned against her doorframe like she was auditioning for House of Cards. You and I, we could do better, she repeated, her voice sweet as poison. I blinked, because apparently my brain was buffering. Better, how? She smiled, the kind of slow, knowing smile that makes you feel like you've already agreed to something damn near illegal. Melissa thinks she's clever. He thinks he's cleverer. But both of them? They're sloppy. Predictable. And predictable people are easy to destroy. The way she said destroy, calm, almost gentle, made the hairs on my neck stand up. This wasn't heartbreak talking. This was strategy. She'd been planning something long before my needle met that box of Trojans. I'm listening, I said, because what else do you do when you're standing in the driveway of your wife's lover's house holding her Victoria's Secrets in a trash bag? She tilted her head toward the porch like she was inviting me into a secret society. Step inside. We'll talk. Now, my mama raised me with enough sense to know walking into another man's house, especially that man's house, is the kind of decision that ends up in either a police report or a country song. But curiosity has a gravity to it. So does revenge. And right then, both were pulling me like a riptide. Her living room was immaculate. Minimalist chic with just enough warmth to keep it from feeling like a crime scene. Which, ironically, is what it was about to become. She set down 2 glasses, poured something amber and expensive, and gestured to the couch. Name's Vivian, she said, sliding a glass my way. And before you ask, no, I don't love him anymore. Haven't in years. We stayed together for optics, money, the usual garbage people pretend is noble. Good to know, I muttered, taking a sip. The whiskey hit my throat like a back-alley confession. So what's the plan, Vivian? She grinned, and for a second I swear I saw horns glinting under that perfect blowout. Simple. We take everything they value and turn it into rubble. And we make sure they can't even hold each other when it's done. Sounds intense, I said, though the part of me that had spent all night fantasizing about revenge was screaming, sign me up. Vivian leaned closer, her perfume curling through the air like smoke. First, we let them think they've won. Let them run off to their little getaway, play house in some overpriced hotel room. Meanwhile, we dismantle their lives one bolt at a time. And by dismantle, you mean? She ticked it off on manicured fingers like she was reading from a menu. Freeze accounts. Expose secrets. Pull their little safety nets out from under them. And when they're clinging to each other like the last 2 passengers on a sinking ship, we cut the rope. My pulse was doing drum solos in my ears. Part of me wanted to laugh at the sheer audacity of it. Another part wanted to shake her hand like we'd just drafted the Constitution of petty revenge. But before I could say yes, or run screaming into the night, Vivian dropped the real grenade. Before we start, she said, her voice soft, almost tender, you should know something about Melissa. I frowned. What about her? Vivian sipped her whiskey, her eyes never leaving mine. She's not who you think she is. And if you stick around for this ride, you're going to find out why. Vivian didn't blink when she dropped that line. She just sat there, swirling her whiskey like it held the universe's cheat codes. Meanwhile, I was gripping my glass so tight I half expected it to shatter. What do you mean she's not who I think she is? I asked, my voice doing that shaky thing I hated, the one that made me sound like a rookie cop 2 days from retirement. Vivian smirked like she'd been waiting for that question all night. Your wife. Melissa. You think she's a bored corporate drone playing dress-up for my idiot husband? Cute. Really cute. I leaned forward, my pulse tapping Morse code against my ribs. Spit it out. She did, casually, like she was commenting on the weather. She's got another husband. The room tilted. For a second, I thought maybe the whiskey had hit harder than I realized. Come again? Vivian set her glass down with surgical precision. Melissa's married. To someone else. Has been for 3 years. My guess? You never saw the paperwork because she never filed it. I barked out a laugh so dry it could have started a brush fire. You're lying. Am I? Vivian slid her phone across the coffee table. A photo filled the screen, Melissa in a white dress, not our wedding dress, but something sleeker, newer. Standing next to a man with a jawline sharp enough to slice bread. Both of them grinning like sinners who just got a discount on hell. My throat closed up. Where did you get this? Public records, she said with a shrug. And a little help from a friend at City Hall. When my gut tells me something stinks, I dig until I hit the carcass. I stared at that photo, my brain replaying every anniversary, every fight, every night I thought we were building something real. Turns out, what we were building was a stage set, and I was the prop. Vivian wasn't finished. She met him before she met you. He's military. Overseas half the year. Probably why she had time for my idiot husband and whatever fantasy she's been feeding you. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. All I could do was grip that phone like it might explain why the woman I thought I knew had built a secret life big enough to have its own zip code. Finally, I managed, why are you telling me this? Vivian leaned in, her perfume wrapping around me like smoke from a slow fire. Because knowledge is leverage. And leverage is power. You want to wreck them? This is where we start. And just like that, the narrative flipped. Melissa wasn't just a cheater. She was a liar, a con artist, a magician pulling husbands out of hats. And me? I wasn't just a man scorned. I was about to become the hand of God in her carefully constructed little world. I didn't say yes to Vivian's offer that night. Didn't say no either. I just left her house with my head pounding and that photo burning a hole in my pocket like contraband. Drove aimlessly for an hour, windows down, cold air slapping my face, trying to figure out when my life became a soap opera written by Satan. By the time I pulled into my driveway, one thought had crystallized so sharp it could cut glass. Melissa thought she was playing chess. But the board just got flipped. Sleep? Forget it. I lay there in the dark staring at the ceiling, my heartbeat ticking like a time bomb. Melissa wasn't just cheating, she was living a double life, and I'd been the unpaid intern in her circus. Every kiss, every I love you suddenly felt like counterfeit bills passed off in the dead of night. By sunrise, I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even mad. I was methodical. See, grief is messy. Anger's loud. But cold, calculated revenge? That's an art form. First move, control the battlefield. Money. Melissa loved 2 things, control and comfort, and both lived in the zeros of our bank account. I logged in and saw the joint account sitting fat and happy with the savings I'd been hoarding for years. I smiled the way a wolf smiles at a limping deer. 2 clicks later, those funds were in an account with one name on it, mine. Next, I locked the credit cards, because nothing says, "I know what you did," like getting your Amex declined in front of your lover at a 5-star hotel. By 8 a.m., I was in the garage, dragging out boxes like a man exorcising demons. Every stiletto, every cocktail dress, every trinket she swore was just a splurge, went into black trash bags. But I didn't stop at clothes. Oh no. I took the bed sheets too. Let her wrap herself in the scent of polyester when she's reminiscing about our Egyptian cotton. While I worked, her phone buzzed on the counter like an accomplice begging for immunity. I glanced at the screen. A text from lover boy. "Can't wait to see you tonight, nurse." Naughty winking face. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I opened the thread, copied his number, and saved it under a name that would make my phone smirk every time it lit up, Daddy-to-be. At 10:03 a.m., I dialed. He answered on the second ring, his voice dripping smugness like grease off a cheap burger. "Hey, babe." "Wrong babe," I cut in. "Calm. Dead calm. Just wanted to say congrats. You're going to be a daddy. And tell Melissa she's homeless now." Click. I didn't wait for the fallout. I didn't need to. That message was a bullet, and it would hit its target with surgical precision. Meanwhile, I loaded the last bag into the truck bed, climbed in, and drove toward lover boy's address with a grin sharp enough to slice tires. It was poetic, really, delivering my wife's lies to the doorstep of the man who thought he'd won. But when the door swung open and Vivian stood there, hair perfect, eyes cool as winter steel, I realized the game was about to level up. She didn't look surprised. Not even mildly curious. She just smirked like a cat watching a mouse deliver itself to the trap. "Well," she said, glancing at the mountain of trash bags. "Looks like you came to play." "I'm done playing," I said. "Good," she replied, stepping aside. "Because I've got something that'll make you want to burn the whole board." Vivian shut the door behind me with a click so soft it felt ominous. The house smelled faintly of citrus and gunpowder, the kind of scent you associate with someone who knows how to bleach a crime scene. My trash bags sat in her foyer like black confessions, and she barely gave them a glance. "Drink?" she asked, already moving toward a bar cart gleaming with bottles that cost more than my first car. "Why not?" I muttered. If I was about to walk through the gates of hell, I might as well do it with bourbon in hand. She poured 2 fingers neat, slid the glass to me, then perched on the arm of a leather chair like a queen preparing for a coup. "You think Melissa's other marriage was the big secret?" Vivian started, her tone so casual I almost laughed. "That's cute. That's precious, really." My grip tightened on the glass. "What are you saying?" She reached behind the chair, pulled out a manila folder thick enough to double as a doorstop, and dropped it on the coffee table with a thud that echoed in my bones. "Your wife," she said, "is a business." I frowned. "What?" Vivian opened the folder and fanned out a series of glossy photos and documents like she was dealing cards in Vegas. There were bank statements, tax filings, even a couple of shots of Melissa in hotels with men who were definitely not me. Or lover boy. "Melissa doesn't just cheat," Vivian explained. "She monetizes it. Corporate retreats, business trips, charity events, she's got a network of men funding her lifestyle. Husbands, boyfriends, sugar daddies, call them what you want. You? You were the anchor account. The stable one. The one that made her look respectable while she played high-risk poker on the side." The words slid into my head like cold steel. Every argument we ever had about money, every vague excuse about travel, every time she said trust me, all of it clicked into place like a lock snapping shut. "How do you know all this?" I asked, my voice low. Vivian smiled, slow and sharp. Because one of those men was my husband. And when I started digging, guess whose name kept popping up like an unpaid bill? Yours. Along with 4 others. She slid a single sheet toward me. A ledger. Melissa's ledger. Hotel expenses, wire transfers, even crypto wallets. My wife wasn't just a cheater, she was running a side hustle in stilettos. I stared at the numbers, my stomach knotting tighter with every line item. This wasn't about love or lust. This was business strategy with a body count of broken vows. She's got a pattern, Vivian continued. She latches on to men who underestimate her, builds a little empire off their blind spots, and moves on before the foundation cracks. Classic grifter play. Elegant, really. I set the glass down so hard it clinked. So what's your angle? Why show me this? Her eyes glittered like a wolf at feeding time. Because we can burn her entire house of cards to the ground. Together. You want revenge? I want recompense. She cost me 7 figures and 3 years of my life. You think I'm going to let her waltz into the sunset with a duffel full of dirty money? She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper that hummed like a live wire. We don't just make her homeless. We make her infamous. Vivian's eyes locked on mine like a sniper sighting her mark. Every syllable dripped precision. We don't humiliate her, she said. We dismantle her. Quietly. Irreversibly. I leaned back in the chair, the bourbon coating my throat like courage on tap. Define dismantle. She smiled, slow and predatory. Step 1, financial asphyxiation. You already froze the joint account? Drained it this morning, I said, feeling a flicker of grim pride. Good boy, she purred, like I was her apprentice in a dark art. Next, we pull her other income streams. I've got names, numbers, payment trails. Sugar daddies don't like being exposed, they'll cut her off faster than she can pack a thong. I nodded slowly, the bitter satisfaction curling through me like smoke. And then? Vivian leaned closer, her perfume thick with something floral and dangerous. Then we scorch her social currency. See, Melissa thrives on perception. She needs to look untouchable, glamorous, adored, desirable. We flip that script. We make her radioactive. She slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a draft email, subject line urgent, possible fraudulent activity. Attached were screenshots of Melissa's ledgers, her burner accounts, her little web of men orbiting like pathetic planets. BCC her boss, her board, every major client she schmoozes with, Vivian said. No accusations, just questions. Plant the seed. Let it sprout. I stared at the screen, my pulse thundering in my ears. This wasn't petty revenge. This was scorched earth. You've done this before, I said quietly. She chuckled, low and unbothered. Sweetheart, you don't survive 10 years with a man like mine without learning to sharpen a blade. A silence stretched between us, thick as wet cement. Then I asked the question I'd been choking down since this started. What happens to her when this is over? Vivian's smile widened, all teeth now. She disappears. Maybe not literally, though I wouldn't cry if it came to that, but socially? Financially? She'll be a ghost haunting her own reputation. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt something. Instead, I felt alive, more than I had in years. Melissa wanted to play games? Fine. I'd bring the board, the pieces, and burn the whole damn thing down. Vivian tapped the folder like a gavel. We start tonight. She's still on her business trip, yes? I nodded. She's got no idea the walls are caving in. Vivian grinned. Perfect. You take the financials, I'll handle the social shrapnel. By the time she sachets back into town, her kingdom will be ash. And then, just as I was about to leave, Vivian dropped one last bomb like it was garnish on this revenge cocktail. "Oh, and by the way," she said casually, picking up her glass, "Melissa's not the only one with secrets. Your name's on something too. You might want to sit down before I show you." Her words hung in the air like a spider dangling over my head. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared at Vivian as my stomach tied itself into knots. "What the hell does that mean?" I asked, voice tight as a guitar string about to snap. Vivian didn't answer right away. She rose from the chair with the grace of someone who's never rushed a day in her life and glided to a mahogany cabinet in the corner. From it, she pulled another folder, thinner than the last, but heavy enough to feel like a tombstone. She laid it on the coffee table, tapped it once, and slid it toward me. "Read." I opened it with hands that suddenly felt too big for my own wrists. Inside were 3 documents, a deed, a loan agreement, and a glossy brochure for something called Red Ember Retreats. The name meant nothing to me, until I saw my own signature on the bottom of the loan form. I didn't sign this," I stammered. Vivian tilted her head, a predator studying the moment its prey realizes the trap isn't where it thought. "You didn't knowingly sign it," she corrected. "But Melissa did, using your name. Forged everything. That business trip she's on. It's not just about bed sheets and bad decisions. It's about laundering the down payment for this little wellness scam." My vision tunneled. I skimmed the brochure, exclusive holistic healing experiences. Packages starting at $15,000. The pictures were all infinity pools and white linens, the kind of place influencers go to take filtered photos and pretend their lives aren't imploding. "You're telling me," I swallowed hard. "My wife used my identity to borrow $250,000 for a scam spa?" Vivian's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Sweetheart, calling it a scam would be generous. By the time the first client complains, the LLC will vanish, the domain will be dead, and the debt collectors will be sending letters to you." A cold wave crashed over me. Not only had Melissa been sleeping her way through a Rolodex, she'd turned me into a financial suicide bomber without my consent. "I can fight this," I said, more to myself than to her. "I can call the bank, the police." Vivian cut me off with a look so pitying it made my blood boil. "And tell them what? That your wife of 11 years stole your identity to fund her polyamorous pyramid scheme? Honey, that's not a case. That's a punchline." I slammed the folder shut, my heartbeat drumming against my ribs like it was trying to break out. "What do you want from me?" Vivian leaned in close, her voice a whisper dipped in venom. "I want you focused. Because now this isn't just about revenge. It's about survival. If we don't burn her first, she burns you, and trust me, Melissa doesn't leave ashes. She leaves craters." I sat back, my pulse a live wire under my skin. 11 years of marriage, and I didn't know the woman I was sleeping next to. But now I did. She wasn't a wife. She was a war machine. Vivian reached for her glass again, her eyes gleaming like headlights in a dark tunnel. "So, are you in? Or are you ready to let her bankrupt you while she sips cocktails in Bali with her next victim?" I didn't answer with words. I just picked up the folder, tucked it under my arm, and stood. Because some choices aren't choices, they're survival instincts dressed in rage. As I walked to the door, Vivian called after me, her voice lilting like a dare. "Oh, and one more thing, she's flying back tomorrow. With him." The next 24 hours were a blur of digital smoke and quiet detonations. While Vivian handled the social napalm, anonymous tips, carefully curated screenshots, whispers that would ripple through Melissa's precious inner circle, I buried myself in the financial kill switch. Every shared account? Emptied. Every card she used? Frozen solid. Her lease, her phone plan, even her streaming subscriptions? Cancelled with extreme prejudice. By the time I was done, Melissa's life was a dry husk waiting for the first spark. And then came the text. Landing at 6. Can't wait to see you. Winking face. Oh, I bet you can't. I didn't reply. I just parked my truck across from the airport Hilton and waited. Sure enough, at 6:47 p.m. she emerged from the sliding doors wearing sunglasses like a discount celebrity, Loverboy rolling her suitcase behind her like a trained poodle. They looked radiant in the way people do when they think they've beaten the house. They hadn't noticed the wolf at the edge of the woods. I trailed them to his place, our battlefield. By the time they pulled into his driveway, the sun was dipping low, setting the world in that copper glow that makes endings feel biblical. They were halfway to the door when Vivian appeared on the porch, wine glass in hand, smile sharp enough to draw blood. Melissa froze, Loverboy right behind her like a guilty shadow. "Hi, sweetie," Vivian sang, her voice sugar wrapped around a blade. "What's the phrase?" "Oh yes, bless your heart." Melissa tried to speak, but Vivian cut her off with a single raised finger. Then she turned to me, standing at the curb with my arms crossed, and nodded. "Showtime." I popped the tailgate. Black garbage bags tumbled onto the pristine driveway like corpses at a mob drop site. Dresses, heels, lingerie spilling into the open for the whole damn neighborhood to see. Melissa's face drained of color. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed, her voice wobbling between fury and fear. "Evicting you," I said, my voice calm, almost cheerful. "Oh, and Loverboy?" I turned to him, grinning like a man who's run out of mercy. "Congrats. You're going to be a daddy." The words hit him like a sledgehammer. His jaw went slack. Melissa spun on me, eyes wide, the perfect mask finally cracking. What did you?" Vivian stepped down from the porch, her heels clicking like a countdown to Armageddon. "Oh, honey," she said to Melissa, tilting her head with mock sympathy. "You should have stuck to one husband at a time." She handed me her phone. On the screen was the email blast we'd scheduled for 8 o'clock sharp, Melissa's entire financial web, her fake LLC filings, even the forged loan papers with my name splashed across them, all zipped neatly in a folder and addressed to her employer, her clients, and every mutual connection she held dear. One tap away from ruin. Melissa lunged, but I stepped back, phone raised like a torch. "Don't," I warned. "Because if this sends, you won't just lose your job, you'll lose the game you think you're winning." She froze, chest heaving, the reality slamming into her like a freight train. For the first time in 11 years, Melissa had nothing to say. "Here's how this goes," I said, my voice steady, final. "You sign over power of attorney on that loan you dumped on me. Today. You walk away with whatever's in your suitcase. And you never, ever try to find me again. Or Vivian." She tapped send. "And trust me, the internet will eat you alive." Melissa's lips trembled. Loverboy backed away like a man who'd just realized he bet on a horse with 3 legs. And me? I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel rage. I felt clean. Like someone who'd crawled through a sewer and come out the other side breathing mountain air. 10 minutes later, she was gone, stuffed into a rideshare with a single suitcase and a life that had just been reduced to rubble. Vivian raised her glass to me, eyes glittering like shards of broken mirrors. "To ashes," she said. I clinked my empty bottle against it, a bitter smile curling my lips. "To starting over." And as I drove away, the bag still littering the driveway behind me like a cautionary tale, one thought burned bright in my head. She wanted a game. I gave her a war.